Hey, it's Victor from Social Firestarter. Today I want to talk about edits that you can do to your GMB listing that have the potential to actually trigger re-verification or even worse, a suspension. So this is something that's kind of like increased in frequency over the last year, and I would say that it's only going to get worse or if not just kind of stay the same as far as like the volatility of these listings. So this is something that not every attorney knows unless they're messing with a lot of different locations all at once and they've encountered some of these issues already. But basically something that I think everybody should know about these listings here, like the one I'm showing you, they're actually really volatile. They're super sensitive to certain changes that you do on them, and for a lot of good reasons as well. But basically, there's people that they'll use the GMB listings to exploit the platform for more leads, whether they get more listings than they should, or they start to create listings that don't represent the exact name of the law firm. Whatever it is, the spammy tactic that might be used, a lot of that can be kind of like traced if you look at the patterns that a lot of these marketers are using. So the algorithm at this point can actually pick up on certain patterns, and then it algorithmically just decides if it should push a certain edit through and make it live, or if it should reject it, or if it should trigger re-verification or a suspension. So it kind of sucks that it's not like a real human that's doing these, that's checking up on this type of thing, but it's really just the algorithm that's taking over and is deciding if your listing is too spammy to keep live and to keep verified. So there's actually certain edits, like certain things on here. If you were to go in here on your law firm's listing and just simply change them for no good reason, it can very much just suspend it. And this does happen. It's been happening more so over the past year. So let me actually explain a few things that you want to avoid doing. And then let me explain what you might want to do if you do actually have to mess with a certain edit that can trigger re-verification or suspension, because there are ways to avoid it or to lessen the risk of any of this happening. But again, even if it were to trigger, as long as your location is fully compliant with all the policies that Google has, you should be able to successfully reinstate it. Now, there's usually some downtime from this. The amount of time that it takes to contact the Google rep and actually get them to reply to you, that might actually make a huge difference in the amount of new business that's coming in. So that's something that you want to keep in mind, when you're messing with your GMB listings. But also, if you happen to be an attorney that is using a shared suite, you should know these are not compliant with the terms of service. So if anything were to happen to a GMB listing that you have opened in a location like this, in a location that Google might not like, there is a chance that you cannot reinstate the listing and you have already basically lost that type of visibility that you gained through it, which can be, it can be very detrimental to a campaign. It can essentially cut off all of your phone calls coming in from that local visibility. So really important to keep in mind if you're managing the listings yourself, but also if you have a marketing agency doing it for you. Obviously, you want to make sure that they know what they're doing so that they don't accidentally trigger anything on their end. So let me go into this. And of course, this is the main dashboard, business.google.com, and I'm looking at our test listing here. But if you go to the info section, that's where you can make all the edits to the listing. So let me go down some of these and explain the level of risk that you're facing if you were to edit anything here. A good rule of thumb is if you're making a huge change, pretty much means there's a bigger risk involved, but I can go back to that after I've gone through these. So business title, huge one. There's not too much of a reason for you to be updating the name of it, unless it was wrong or unless you're just adding just a little bit extra. Maybe you want to include the LLC in there, and you didn't previously have it included. Those tiny changes, a little bit less risk, but pretty much if you're messing with the business title at all, you are likely to trigger re-verification. I would say the top 2 locations here that can trigger that would be the business title as well as the location. So in this particular listing, this is a service area only listing. This doesn't have an actual pin drop like every law firm pretty much does have. In some occasions you wouldn't want to put it out there, but in almost every case, every law firm will have a specific location. If you go in there and you remove it, so like if you switch it up and you make it into a service area only, or even if you just update the address to a different location, that's very likely to trigger re-verification. That just goes back to people that get too many of these listings, or they maybe sell the verification of a new listing as a service. One of the first things they'll do is change the business title, change the address that they use to verify, and change the practice area, or in this case, just the category of the GMB listing. So, those are like the top 3 sections right there. But also name, address, phone number. If you've been following the videos that we put out there, you should know that the NAP section, the name, address, phone number from anything referencing the business, has to line up properly to have its best effect. So obviously messing with anything there can trigger, can be a bit of a risky edit. So something that is not risky, the business hours, you can switch that up. There's plenty of reasons why you would want to change that, especially, 2020. Plenty of businesses, they were having to change up those business hours depending on what was going on. So you can very much understand that this would not be so much of a risky thing to edit. Same goes with like the special hours, right? Phone number, yes, can trigger it. Short URL, the short name, I would say, is not a risky one. URL, that is a risky one. Let's go down services. These don't really matter. These aren't really going to trigger anything. Description, I have seen in a rare occasion this trigger re-verification, but I would say it's nowhere near as high of a risk, especially not if you're placing quality content in here. But let's say I went in here and I replaced this and I put a bunch of like key terms and just stuffed it. There's a good chance that could trigger something. So that's pretty much it here. Now, what can you do to lower the risk of triggering re-verification or triggering suspension? Or also, what can you do when you're anticipating that something is going to need to be changed? So there are some things that you can do. Basically, you want to make sure, so again, this is all being done algorithmically. There's no Google rep that is looking at your edits and deciding what they should do with them. And this is all, it's all being done automatically. So that's something to keep in mind here. When you push an edit through, the algorithm, the platform now needs to distinguish if that is a spammy edit or if that is a correct edit. Because if you are correcting the information on the listing, that is a good move that you should be doing. It's cleaning up the platform. It is aligning things properly. And so in that case, it should not be triggering it. But how does it make this distinction? That's what's going to decide, how at the end of the day, how risky your edits are going to be. Well, the way that it distinguishes that is it pulls all the information that Google already has in its algorithm, and it's in the search engine, and it tries to find connections so that it can verify. It's basically trying to cross-reference the info that you just pushed through before it makes it live. It tries to cross-reference it, and if it can find a source that can confirm that information, theoretically, it should go ahead and push the edit live and not trigger any sort of re-verification. So what does that mean? Well, it means that you can go out there, look at your citations, look at your social profiles, look at any sort of business directory that you've placed yourself on, or really any mention of your law firm online. And if those places all have the new information, like let's say you're moving the office to a new area within the same city, and you want to update the address on that listing so that you can move your stuff over to the new office. Go across all your citations, go across everything, update it, make sure that all of those have the information that will be needed to be cross-referenced. Try to get them indexed. Obviously, it's more advanced. It's harder to do, but if you're going to Justia, Avo, Martindale, Facebook, Yelp, if you're going to all those popular listings and citations, we can call them, and you have all those updated, let's say a day or two before you go through and click on updating it on your dashboard, you're going to tremendously lower the risk of anything bad happening, because the algorithm can now safely and very clearly now understand that the info that you're trying to push through is not anything malicious. It is in fact just correcting and cleaning up the listing, aligning it to the rest of the info that Google has about this entity. So that's pretty much the overall concept, making sure that Google sees authoritative sources that can vouch for the edits that you're trying to push. If they can see that, you're not going to have trouble with re-verification. The only other thing I can include in this video, it is a longer one, but if the listing has a spammy history, if you've been messing around with the name, title a whole bunch, if you've been adding, removing constantly the users that manage the listing, you can end up getting it classified as a little bit spammy. And in some rare cases with listings like that, I've actually heard of people getting re-verification triggered from even just updating the hours, which is pretty much unheard of for any other listing. But if the GMB listing is brand new, it's going to be much more volatile than if it has been around for a few years as well. So it's another thing to keep in mind. You won't really run into issues if your GMB listing has been standing for many, many years. And that's pretty much it. I explained a whole bunch in this video, so I might unpack some of that in future videos, but let me know if you have questions by placing it in the comment section. And again, if you are looking for more info as to how we do our SEO, head over to lawyergmb.com. But that's it for this video. I will catch you guys in the next one.